They were brand new, $1 billion worth of Boeing jets, custom built for China, and then rejected without a word. In April 2025, a fleet of gleaming Boeing jets was flown back to Seattle. The order? Rejected. The message? Brutal. Boeing didn't lose a deal. It lost its second largest market, and possibly its future. Boeing was once the gold standard in aviation. Now it's being cut out of the fastest growing markets on Earth. Now, China's building its own jets, slapping 125% tariffs on Boeing and canceling contracts mid-air. And if Boeing falls, 1.6 million US jobs might go down with it. On April 20th, 2025, 3 fully assembled Boeing 737 MAX jets were flown out of Zhoushan, China, not to customers, but back to Seattle, rejected without notice. According to the Wall Street Journal, this was part of a sweeping but silent directive from Beijing, instructing state-owned airlines to halt all Boeing deliveries. The first such embargo since U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports jumped as high as 145% a month earlier. Boeing has $14.5 billion in aircraft stranded in limbo. And with no buyers in China, its second largest market, those jets are now liabilities. Aviation analyst Richard Abulafia told Bloomberg, "This isn't about sales. It's about strategic decoupling." But if China's goal is to collapse America's industrial core, Boeing isn't just collateral, it's the first target. And this standoff? It's only the opening move. Boeing isn't losing market access, it's losing political oxygen. The company delivered over 1,000 aircraft to China from 2010 to 2018, but has received 0 large-scale orders since 2019, and now even completed deliveries are blocked. China's Ministry of Commerce blames Washington's tariffs and demands predictability, a veiled ultimatum: lift the sanctions or lose the market. But beyond commercial disruption, the rejection is symbolic. Boeing aircraft are used in presidential fleets, tied to diplomatic visits, and embedded in multilateral deals. As Georgetown's Center for Strategic and International Studies noted, blocking Boeing isn't just economic, it's a calibrated rejection of U.S. global leadership. What happens when your biggest export becomes your biggest liability? While Boeing planes are grounded, Airbus is finalizing what Reuters calls a record-shattering 500-plane agreement with Chinese carriers, double the value of Boeing's total 2024 commercial orders. Airbus's share of the Chinese market has surged past 55% this year, boosted by its final assembly line in Tianjin, which shields it from the brunt of U.S.-China tariffs. Airbus is no longer just a competitor, it's China's aviation partner, said aviation strategist Brendan Sobey. With Boeing locked out and Airbus expanding local production, the shift isn't cyclical, it's structural. And Boeing's absence is opening doors that won't easily close. But Airbus isn't the only threat, because the real long-term replacement is built in Shanghai. Comac's C919 jet, once dismissed as a symbolic prototype, is now central to China's domestic aviation push. In the first quarter of 2025 alone, Comac doubled its production target from 75 to 150 aircraft per year, with new investment from the China Development Bank and confirmed orders from China Eastern Airlines and Xiamen Airlines totaling over $12 billion. According to Flight Global, Comac is now targeting 10% of global single-aisle aircraft sales by 2030. While still reliant on Western engines and avionics, the aircraft meets domestic certification, and regulators in Vietnam and Indonesia are fast-tracking regional approval. This is no longer a test program, notes aerospace analyst Sheila Kahyaoglu of Jefferies. It's a scaling operation. And Boeing? It's watching its former customer base migrate one route at a time. By 2043, 42% of global air traffic growth will come from Asia, with Africa and Latin America accounting for another 23%, according to Boeing's own CMO. But Boeing's backlogs and production bottlenecks mean carriers in those regions, where demand is highest, wait 10 to 14 years for new planes. In contrast, Comac's delivery window is under 36 months for domestic carriers. Vietnam's Vietjet and Indonesia's Lion Air are already in talks for C919 placements, citing faster timelines and lower acquisition costs. by as much as 22% post-tariff. It's not just price, it's availability, said Lion Air's procurement chief in an April interview with Nikkei Asia. And with U.S. suppliers paralyzed by export restrictions and tariff volatility, Boeing's lead times are a deal breaker. The fastest growing markets in aviation are moving on, and Boeing's not even in the room. Aircraft production isn't just about blueprints. It's about bolts, turbines, rare earth magnets, and fasteners sourced across more than 60 countries. In 2024, fewer than 310 large commercial jets were delivered globally, 28% below pre-pandemic levels, as bottlenecks crippled output. Boeing's top-tier supplier, Howmet Aerospace, recently declared force majeure after failing to meet fastener delivery targets. Just one part missing and production halts. According to PwC's 2025 Aerospace Trends Report, 70% of U.S. aerospace suppliers reported delays tied directly to tariff exposure and rare earth shortages. China's export bans on key inputs like neodymium and dysprosium used in jet engines and avionics have further severed Boeing's supply chain, especially for dual-use applications. And the domino effect is accelerating. Delta's CFO told Bloomberg, "We're not placing any new aircraft orders in 2025 because no one can tell us what they'll cost or when they'll arrive. What happens when global aviation hinges on a factory that can't source a magnet?" Boeing isn't just America's top exporter. It's the Pentagon's fourth largest contractor, with over $20.6 billion in annual defense revenue. But behind the fighter jets and refueling tankers lies a critical vulnerability. China supplies many of the rare earth metals, precision components, and electronic subsystems essential for Boeing's military projects, including the F-15EX and the new F-47 stealth platform. According to the November 2024 Congressional Research Service report, over 90% of Boeing's rare earth magnets originate from China. Magnets used in weapons-grade radar systems and missile guidance units. Following the export bans announced in January 2025, China explicitly named Boeing on its strategic blacklist. And now, entire defense programs are stalling as U.S. contractors scramble for alternative sourcing. We've created a system where a Chinese port manager can delay a hypersonic weapons program, said analyst John Venable at the Heritage Foundation. So the question isn't whether Boeing is essential, it's whether it's sustainable. China controls 70% of the global rare earth supply and produces 92% of the world's high-strength neodymium magnets, according to the Institute for Energy Research. These aren't used in toys. They power the actuators in missile fins, the motors in drones, and the propulsion systems in fighter jets. In March 2025, the U.S. Department of Commerce confirmed that exports of dysprosium and terbium, critical for high-temperature military-grade alloys, had dropped to near zero levels from Chinese ports. Japan and Germany, which supply the U.S. with refined magnets, source most raw material from China. Now, even those countries are facing Chinese restrictions on re-exports. As a result, Boeing's defense wing has halted production on 2 classified programs and is re-evaluating timelines for the F-47. And while domestic mining legislation is circulating in Congress, analysts at Bloomberg NAF estimate it would take 7 to 10 years to build even partial rare earth independence. Until then, America's military edge may sit idle because the magnets won't move. When China slapped a 125% retaliatory tariff on U.S. aerospace imports in April 2025, the cost of a Boeing 737 MAX for Chinese buyers jumped from $117 million to over $260 million overnight. Reuters reports that Junyao Airlines, which had planned to take delivery of 10 new Boeing aircraft this year, paused all acquisitions citing unsustainable cost structures. Bloomberg notes that over 130 Boeing planes built for Chinese carriers are now in storage across Seattle and Zhoushan, with reconfiguration costs exceeding $12 million per jet. Airbus, by contrast, remains shielded via its Chinese final assembly line and faces no such penalties. Boeing executives initially believed tariff exemptions for aerospace components would hold, but as of Q2 2025, U.S. Customs has begun reviewing all dual-use goods, nullifying duty-free privileges. These tariffs aren't just inflationary, they're existential, said Richard A. Bulafia of Aerodynamic Advisory. And unless trade rules are reversed, Boeing's products could become commercially obsolete outside U.S. borders. Boeing supports 1.6 million American jobs across its supplier network, according to the Aerospace Industries Association. But since the first quarter of 2025, major suppliers including Spirit AeroSystems, Hexcel, and Howmet Aerospace have issued earnings warnings, citing order freezes and contract suspensions linked to Chinese retaliation. Delta and United Airlines have both deferred wide-body purchases for 2025, citing pricing instability from component tariffs. Meanwhile, manufacturers in Wichita, Tulsa, and Everett are already cutting shifts. The International Association of Machinists warns that 2025 could bring the first net aerospace job loss in over a decade. More broadly, Boeing's decline threatens to unravel export-dependent sectors, from precision tooling to avionics to specialty alloys. Boeing isn't a company, said MIT economist Suzanne Berger. It's a pillar of the U.S. industrial ecosystem. If that pillar collapses, the reverberations won't stop at aerospace. They'll crack the entire manufacturing foundation. Airbus secured a 300-plane order from China valued at over $35 billion, the largest commercial aviation deal in Chinese history. Simultaneously, Saudi Arabia's Riyadh Air expressed interest in acquiring dozens of remarketed Boeing jets originally built for Chinese carriers, while Indian and Indonesian airlines are negotiating steep discounts. But this isn't opportunism. It's a structural pivot. Boeing's backlog is deep, but its delivery timelines now stretch past 2034, according to internal estimates leaked to the Wall Street Journal. Meanwhile, Comac is scaling up C919 production from 75 to 150 units annually by 2026, with support from China Development Bank. It's not about catching up to Boeing, one Comac insider told Caixin. It's about making Boeing irrelevant. In regions like Southeast Asia and Africa, where demand is surging and Western delivery is years away, whoever can build aircraft fast and affordably will dominate. And that's not an opening Boeing is positioned to fill. This isn't just Boeing's reckoning, it's a warning to every U.S. exporter operating under the assumption that geopolitical power guarantees economic access. Since 2020, China has responded to tariffs not with concessions, but with calculated replacement. Semiconductor bans triggered SMIC. Tech sanctions accelerated Huawei. Now, the embargo on Boeing deliveries has fast-tracked Comac and redrawn global aviation allegiances. We thought Boeing was untouchable, said former U.S. Trade Representative Carla Hills. Now it's being replaced in real time. The more Washington leans on economic weapons, the more Beijing invests in building parallel systems. And as one collapses, the other consolidates. The real question now isn't whether Boeing recovers. It's whether the model that built it still works in a world where access is weaponized and partnerships expire overnight. So here's the reality. Boeing didn't just get cut off. It got replaced, piece by piece, order by order, market by market. But this goes beyond jets and jobs. If the world's second largest economy can lock out America's top exporter and fill the vacuum overnight, who's next? Agriculture, energy, AI. You think Boeing's fall is the final act? Think again, because the next industry facing collapse might be the one your paycheck depends on. We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe. Check out another video that is now on your screen.